Hello and welcome in section 4. In this section, we'll look at the implementation of federated learning in text classification. And we'll start with choosing and preparing the right dataset for decentralized text classification. So let's open the source federated text classification file inside the source directory for this section. And here you can see that we have an example of how we can actually implement that. And this example is based on the original text classification example in TensorFlow, which basically classify a IMDb reviews based on positive or negative labels, right? So we have a bunch of reviews and we want to classify each as positive or negative. And this is a very popular data set, and we will be using that because it is so popular and it's actually included in Keras. And let's get started with it. So at the beginning, we define a couple of constants, and I won't go into the detail of the actual text classification example itself. You can have a look at the original example. I will do my best to actually tell you about those crucial key moments when you have to actually change or tweak the code so it can work with TensorFlow federated. So the first thing that we are doing, we're actually loading this dataset, both the training dataset and test dataset, both X and Y's, the actual data and the labels, Keras dataset, IMDb load data. And after that, we have already prepared and encoded, or at the beginning encoded reviews into the numbers. And this is the properly prepared dataset, which is great because we can then continue to work with it. And what we also have to do, or maybe this is not really required, but in practice we always do that, we kind of want to tweak this data set so it can be the same length, and also it will include some crucial elements inside. For details, have a look at the original examples. But here we basically train data and test data. We make sure that this is the same exact length. Okay, so once we've got our data prepared just on a basic level to work with our model, we can now move to actually prepare it for TensorFlow federated. So there are two parts of going about it, and our main entry point here is generate client's dataset. So here we want to simulate in a similar fashion that we've done it in previous sections. We want to simulate the data for a given client. And I've chosen the IMDb dataset because this is very similar to the other datasets that are in examples, and every review is totally different, and I believe those reviews are unique, so they fit really well with the type of data that you can use with TensorFlow federated and federated learning itself. And we need to convert our dataset, the one that we've got in Keras, we need to change it so the federated learning or TensorFlow federated will actually understand it. And our main data structure that we want to create is a list of datasets, and to be specific of TF dataset data, I believe. Those are the datasets. And in generate client's dataset, what we are doing here, we are basically just generating or copying the X number or N number of clients data or an N number of samples from our training or testing data into we're creating a list of the dataset for each client. And this is simply an array, right? So this is our client's dataset. This is what we need to provide for TensorFlow federated next function. And we will talk about it in the next video, but keep in mind that next, this is our main entry point when we actually do the TensorFlow federated training. Okay, so we need to have a list of data for each client, and we need to provide that inside a TF dataset. Okay, so here we are basically just generating this data out from the original IMDb dataset, and we just wrap it up inside a TF data dataset, basically. And this is what we are doing. So this is the first step. We need to actually create or add or create new TF data dataset using from tensor slices, and we provide a tuple. This is basically just the X and Y that we have in our original dataset, and we just assume that for each client, we've chosen just the one review and one label for this review. That's basically what we are doing here. And once we've got our dataset, we can do the next step, which is to actually perform some kind of a basic transformation that is needed to actually work with dataset, or it's needed to actually make it work with TensorFlow federated dataset. So we are using preprocess function to do that. And this is very similar to previous example, or the first one, where we creating an ordered dictionary with X and Y, and we don't really need to do anything with X. So we basically here, we're not doing anything with X, but we need to convert our labels. We need to add an additional dimension to our dataset because this is the format that is required. And also we need to convert the values to actually floats. And here we have, by default, those are actually integers. Okay, what else? I think that in a moment we will do one more thing about it. So what we are basically doing that in this preprocess, we can, once we have this TF dataset, we can then do a bunch of transformations on our data. This becomes very handy. And the function that I've just described, we're actually running it using the map method on dataset, and we can provide the kind of the function that will transform our data. So this is the main filter that we are using, or converter that we are using to convert our data to the right format for TensorFlow federated. And then once we've got our data prepared, we basically generating those ordered dicts with specific values. We need to also shuffle it and slice it into the batches of a specific size. Okay, so once we've done that, we are ready. We're basically just adding this as another data set for a client. We've got a list of data sets, and each data set we can assume that it represents one client. Yeah, and this is very similar to what we've done before. I wanted to make sure that this particular example is closely related to the previous ones, so you can see what's the idea behind working with those data sets. We are generating for any number of clients, we are generating this train data set and test data set. And the next thing that we need to actually do is that we need to provide a sample batch. And this is required when we are actually converting our model from the Keras to the TensorFlow federated. And we can do a kind of an idiomic way of going about it. In one of the examples is to use map structure from the TF contrib package. And the sample batch is basically this fake batch that only shows the structure of our data. And we have to provide it later on when we are converting our model into the model that can be used by TensorFlow federated. And we can just use a one batch from our data set to do that. And that's pretty much it when it comes to preparing the data. So we are ready to create a new model.